Okay. I don't quite know how to start this episode. We are recording this on January 14th, 2025. This is the day of my book launch. It's
Ooh,
about noon my time. And I thought it
yes.
would be really fun to record an episode today and really just almost document like how I'm feeling and how I felt about the process and um, how I'm feeling today. Uh, More than anything, if I'm honest, that I can look back on it and be like, oh, okay, that's how I was really feeling in the moment. Because it's so weird, guys. It's so weird. I don't know. What were you asking, Ryan?
What specifically is weird?
It's a good question.
I've never done a launch like this where there have been so many unknowns and things out of my control.
Hmm.
Every time that I've launched something in the past, which has been many, of course, almost everything has been in my control. I mean, there might have been some shipping delays or something, but like you could sell to people all around the world. It's available at the same date. Um, I know the messaging. It's largely me that the messaging is coming from, and the product's available. Right. Today, there's like we're gonna sell out Amazon today, like if we haven't already. Um, and I mean, we'll sell a lot of books today, which is great, but also there's a huge shipment of books that are going in towards Amazon that basically Amazon is just having like distribution center delays across the board. They've been having it for the last month.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, though, like the book is live on different Amazons in different times, so it's available in Canada and the US right now, but it's not available in the UK, for example. Australia, it's
Interesting.
not available. And so like I'm trying to push people to review the book and stuff like that, which is really important early on, but of course anybody outside of Canada and the US can't review the book. So it's just there's just so many things that are out of my control, and it's really shown me that you know you can prepare as much as you possibly want, but there are some things that are in your control and there are some things that are out of your control, and you can't stress over the things that are out of your control. There's been a couple podcasts as well that I was really looking forward to going live to that have said basically the quality isn't up to snuff and they're not going to publish them.
That
And
sucks.
that really affected me this morning because that's really a comment on me as a podcast
Mm-hmm.
guest. Both of them, they took their own accountability and said they really want to re-record and they absolutely love the book and they just don't feel like they're recording to the book justice. And, they can do a lot better with their questions and things like that. But really it's on me. Um, with this podcast, it's kind of designed where I talk most of the time. Um, but it should not be that way on interview podcasts where I'm being interviewed. And I think I was approaching it too much like that, and was not well practiced enough. Whereas the writing itself, the book itself, I was very well practiced. Spent a tremendous amount of time and effort preparing and writing and editing and working on it. I did not do the same with podcast guesting and how I talk about the subjects of the book on a podcast, which is, of course, very, very different. And I think that that's biting me in the ass a little bit as well. So, I mean, these are two guys that I consider my friends. We really hit it off. I have a tremendous amount of respect for them, and even more so respect for them that they said, they spent a lot of time and money and effort on their own accords. And they're saying, no, we can't publish this, which, I mean, I don't think that's ever happened to me. But I've produced something and somebody's come back and they're just like, yeah, this isn't good enough. Um, that hurts, man.
Yeah. Especially on today, like it just kind of sets. If you let it, it can set the mood for the
Well,
day.
yeah, I mean, another thing is like you couldn't have told me like 3 days ago. You had
Yeah,
to tell me at
exactly.
10
Yeah.
a.m. on launch day.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, whatever. That's neither here nor there. I'm clearly much more aware of it than others are.
Yeah.
This is why the first attempt is so important. It's not necessarily important because of the hopeful success of the first foray into something slightly different. it's important to
Mm-hmm.
get it out of the way because it sets precedent. John, I'm going to tell you a story. It's going to be a short story, but I'm going to tell it to you
I
anyway
want
because
to
I
hear
know
it.
what we're talking about
Let's
today.
hear it.
It was the
Yeah.
year. It was the year 19. The year of our Lord 1995, John, and a young precocious Ren Jones was taking the stage for his college homecoming talent show. With his three friends, they
Okay.
were about to perform some boys to men hits, songs that a certain lady who has legs that she looked like she squats would love. She would
Yeah.
love these songs.
Right.
Of
She would
course,
love these songs.
the fair Maven Allison is who I'm speaking of, Mrs. Goodman,
Yeah.
Doctor Mrs. Goodman Allison, leg squatter. Um, in any case, we won the talent show, John. And as a prize
Okay.
for winning that talent show, which is hard to do if you've ever attended a historically black college and university, there's a lot of
This
singing
might
talent.
surprise you.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
might surprise you, but I have not.
yeah, you have not. Okay. Uh,
No, might surprise you.
I don't remember the Jewish coalition on campus now that you mention it, John. Moving forward,
Yes.
uh, so we won that talent show, and as a prize, you know what we got to do? We got to open for, at the time, the coolest label around. It was Bad Boy Records, headed by Sean
Okay.
P. Diddy. Is that on tape? Combs. And at
Right.
that time, we opened for his initial rapper. This guy came out before Biggie. His name was Craig Mack, and he had a song called "Flavor in Your." Here comes the brand new flavor in your ear. Time for new flavor. It was a big
Okay.
hit with the
Yeah.
with the kids back in '95, and we practiced and practiced and practiced. We had our steps down, John. Our harmonies were incredible. The presentation was amazing, and you know what happened? The sound went out. The sound
Yeah.
man was a dirt bag, and the sound went out to the extent that when Craig Mack was performing, he mushed the sound man in his face. He put his large hand right into the face of the sound man on stage
Yeah.
and pushed him backwards until he fell into the floor. Now, this is something that we could not have we couldn't have been prepared for this. We got booed.
Yeah.
Is what happened. I got booed in front of as a college sophomore. I got booed in front of all of the cute honeys that were in the crowd who
Yeah.
I told to come watch me sing and open up for this star.
Yeah.
And you know what I did every time after that I performed? I got
You
there
check the
hours
sound.
early and I made
Yeah.
friends with the sound man. I just joked with the guy or the gal, rarely, but usually as a guy, joked with him, hung back. Hey man, I'm gonna grab something to eat. You need me to eat? We never had bad sound again, but we had to have it that one time to set the
Yeah.
precedent so that we were never in a position on stage like other artists were in amateur settings where their sound was jacked up because the sound man will ruin your show, John. And we've seen it
Yeah.
get ruined. Never happened to us again. But we had to go I had to get booed by all those 90s hotties, all those cuties in the crowd at homecoming that said, "You guys ain't shit," or y'all sucked. Nobody wanted to hear that shit anyway. I don't know why they asked you to open for this national recording artist. So I'm saying that to say, man, it sucks that happened, but it's going to set a precedent that you will be ridiculously prepared for your interviews when the obvious challenge comes out if you're going to maintain that. And I just can't imagine all the good that this book is going to do up front. It's actually a good book, and I'm not a big reader, but this was clever and funny, and it was like it's also like talking to an old friend because some of the things I was familiar with. I was so
Right.
elated when I got to the eats cheese by the slice portion of it. I was like, I know this reference. I get this. It was like Captain
You know
America
where
and
that comes
Avengers.
from.
And
Yeah.
Business Was Great Once just lit me up because I'd forgotten about it until I read it at the heading and that like it's an and this I've got a question for you later about this, but it felt more like talking to you than any of the other books that I've read of yours before.
Mm.
Maybe because they were very practical and technical, but this was like having a conversation. I was shaking my head to myself as I drank my ionized water. I wand it first to get the impurities
Right.
out, saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's just like John. Oh, that's so like John. Oh, John, you slay me." Things that I said to myself. I digress. You're welcome.
It's funny because that's one of the points I made in the review that I wrote for the book today. was about how like a lot of books that you read, it feels like you're being talked at versus
Mm.
having a conversation,
Yes.
which makes a big difference for me as far as readability. So it's funny that you say that because that was one of the big points that I made.
It's the truth.
It's such a weird feeling. I mean, this thing has been something that I was doing that I was so happy to talk about for so long. Probably because it wasn't real yet, if that makes sense. It's really easy to talk about something that's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But then push comes to shove and it gets in people's hands, and you're like, oh shit, I think it's good. But of course, I think it's good. It's the best that I could have possibly done at the time. But are others who I admire going to think that it's good? Are they going to show up for me, right, in ways? And, some people really have. Others have been mysteriously absent,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine. I mean, especially with what's going on in California with the fires, like
Right.
some of them are in California. I mean, there's just a lot going on. Um, and that's another piece of it. You control what you can control at any point in time. The only thing that you can do is control what you can control. And if you ask people, it's like, what is the absolute worst thing that can happen around a book launch? It is a major terrorist event or natural disaster.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually like the worst thing that could possibly happen. And there's a natural disaster that's affecting a lot of people in a really major way. And of course, it's going to affect the book launch. It's going to take up space in feeds. It's going to it's obviously pushed a lot of people in California out of their homes, destroyed their homes. I know people whose homes have been destroyed. And then the whole distribution chain, through Amazon. There's massive delays across the board. And so control what you can control, right? And at the end of the day, the people who have gotten the book have really nice things to say about it, almost across the board. I'm sure that there will be negative reviews. I'm sure that I will read them and dwell over them and skim over the positive ones. But that's just the way that I think things are. I guess at the end of the day, I mean, I feel proud. I really feel proud because I did something.
Mm-hmm.
I did something real in this day and age where there's so much pressure all of the time to do these things that just disintegrate within not even hours, minutes. A lot of the time, we work so hard to. If we're talking about content, we work so hard to create content, and then it's gone. Really, I mean, podcasts have a little bit more staying power, but like not really. Social media even less. And I'm proud that I did the thing that was harder to do, that did not get the immediate feedback. And here's a really cool thing that happened today that I didn't know actually until today. So you guys know that Calvin and Hobbes comic that I have behind me at my desk in Toronto?
Yep.
It's my favorite comic strip of all time. And it's this comic strip where it's all silent, there's no words, but Calvin asks his dad to play outside, and his dad basically motions that he has to work and he's at his desk. And then there's a couple slides where his dad is like reassessing his priorities in his life. And then you see the next one and they're outside playing. And then the final slide of it is Calvin's mom holding Calvin to give his dad a kiss on the cheek while his dad at nighttime is finishing his work. It's just this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful comic, and like one of the best, I think, comics ever written. So that comic, get this, was originally published on January 14th, 1990.
That's awesome.
Which is exactly 25 years ago. My birthday is on October 25th. Allison's favorite number is the number 25.
Nice.
And I didn't know that until today, until I saw it pop up that today's the 25th anniversary of that comic.
Yep.
And so it's just like, there are some things that happen and you're just like, man, there's no way that this is all completely random, right?
Yeah.
I didn't set the
Like
release
Easter
date for
eggs.
the book. My publisher set the release date for the book. I had nothing to do with it. I don't know.
The universe
It's all
winks
some
and
big plan
nods,
or
John.
whatever. Yeah, right.
Enough to
Right.
the universe wink, or in my case, God winks enough so that he's not revealed totally, but just enough to be comforted that the threads are being they're being controlled in some way. Like there's some rhyme, or the total belief can be difficult for some people. The total absence can be difficult for other people. Uh, but I think that the God source universe provides just enough so that we don't feel totally randomized, but we don't
Right.
feel totally controlled. And those winks like that allow us to operate from a standpoint of free will, while also being comforted by the fact that there must be some sort of design included. Um, so it's just enough space for a human to operate without feeling like we're free
Right.
falling through the universe. That's awesome, man. That's good stuff.
So there's been a few things. Um, there's been a few things that have happened. Uh, so the first thing that I'll say is, I have some friends and colleagues who clearly had set an alarm for this morning, and I woke up to a few, not a lot, but I woke up to a few very, very kind congratulations messages, audio notes, that type of thing. I cannot begin to tell you how much that means. And that's not it's not even necessarily from people that I am close to. I mean, in a few cases, but not every case. Some of them it's loose connections. These are not people who, like, quote unquote have influence. Like, it's not about that. It's just one of those, hey, recognize that anytime anybody is coming out with something that they've clearly worked really hard on, the day of the release, they're going to be feeling unsure of themselves. They're going to be really, really craving some sort of support, social support. God, it means the world to me. And so think about that. If you know somebody coming out with something, be that person to show up and send a text message, audio note, whatever. It doesn't need to say anything other than, hey man, you did a thing. Fuck yeah. Proud of you. Proud to know you. Um, it's so, even just I woke up this morning, somebody in a business community that I'm in, there's like 6 Facebook messages from him. Right? Message 1 is like, congratulations. The other message is the confirmation page on Amazon for his review that he's already written. And then the next message is in order of $50
Nice.
on Amazon. And if I'm honest, this is somebody that I actually was feeling, I wouldn't say negative towards. I have no expectation, but like I'd hoped that he would support me with the book. And he was, kind of like curiously absent. So, he just knew when to show up. And even I sent last night follow-ups to everybody who I sent the VIP boxes to, these big boxes with the watch and the metallic bookmark and stuff. And I sent a follow-up to everybody, and the follow-up was very, very simple. It was just, hey, your book should have arrived by now. I understand that you're quite busy, but I truly believe that Obvious Choice is worth the effort. Couple of my favorite chapters are, I think I said 2, 7, and 10. Thanks so much for your support of the book. It means the world to me, right? And I got a lot of really, really nice messages back to that. And a lot of the messages are, hey, got it, looks great. Like people are like blown away by the package. I think actually like taking time to do things that everybody knows are much more difficult than they need to be means a lot. There's a principle in behavioral psychology called costly signaling. Basically, we value things if we know that it costs a lot to do those things. Um, the line that I always go back to is Charles P.D. Bell about the textbook in the Online Trainer Academy. We asked him in like a case study story. We asked him why he bought the Online Trainer Academy, and he's like, I didn't really know who you were. You know, I found you. I found a couple other people selling like online training business stuff, whatever. But then I saw that you had a textbook, and all that I could think was, ain't nobody going to go to that much trouble for some bullshit course. And I think the reflection that I always have is on that point. Ain't nobody going to go to that much trouble for some bullshit. A lot of people produce books, right? I get a lot of books in the mail. They kind of just like fire the book at you, or there's not. You know, we put clearly a tremendous amount of effort into the package that we sent these early copies in, and the reaction around the board was, oh my god, how different. Like this is the like some of the top book reviewers in the world literally said like this is probably the nicest package I've ever gotten with a book. It helps stand out. It helps show that you're serious about a thing. It's like the book can't be that bad. You know, if somebody's willing to go to that much trouble for it, it's a sign that they went to it's you know, it's not that hard to like bind a book these days. Somebody clearly went to a lot of trouble with it. And so how can you do more pinpointed, I guess, like costly signaling with how you deliver your thing? Do the unscalable things, right? Write personal notes in all of your packages for people and send it to them and have it shipped. What did you say, Amber? You had to sign for it?
Yeah.
Right, when it
I
arrived?
remember saying, I told the delivery person, I'm like, I did not order anything from Amazon that was worth signing for. And so what is this? And I open it, and it was a happy surprise, because in my head, if I have to sign for it, it must be valuable. And it was. But I hadn't ordered anything.
But that's like, what we think.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we think. If you have to sign for it, it's got to be valuable. So how you ship, I mean, this is what we teach people in the online trainer mentorship. One of the things that you do when you take on a premium client in order to charge more is offer them a premium service. There are varying levels of, call it placebo, call it benign bullshit, call it salesmanship, that are involved in there. And I don't think that any of them are bad. I mean, what you are doing is you are adding to the enjoyment of the thing, and you're adding to the belief that this thing is serious and good at what it does. And so when you ship, what we tell people is like, hey, when you ship your welcome package to onboard somebody, of course you could email a PDF. Of course you could. Everybody knows you could. Ren, what's in your welcome package?
I put in a measuring tape, simple enough, centimeters on one side, inches on the other side. I put in a printout of the welcome kit PDF, which is always addressed to the person by name, so I can't mass print them. They're all printed individually because they have their name on the front. I also put in a whiteboard, a magnetic whiteboard, dry erase board that they can put on their refrigerator. I send them dry erase pens, dry erase erasers, all magnetic. And I also send you can buy a box of like quotes that are motivational, little cards. I just randomly get a card, plop it in there. So it may read something like.
So you bought a box of them.
Bought a box of them. You know, many may open and say, "You are the greatest investment you'll ever make, it, and you're worth it," or some cheesy shit like that.
Right, Jim Rohn.
Yeah,
Jim
right.
Rohn or whatever. Right.
Right.
One of those Bible thumping self improvement business gurus.
The Jim Rohn gift box for Christmas. And I just randomized one of those in there, and I put a cover letter. There's a welcome kit letter that I put in there, highlighting what the things are.
And then you ship it.
And I ship it FedEx, man. Like overnight, no questions asked. No
How much does it cost you?
Sometimes 20, 30, sometimes 60, 70. But I make sure that if I get that client that day, I am doing everything
Yeah.
I can so that they get that box the next day. Oh, by the way, my boxes are customized too in my brand colors. You open the box, it says you made the right decision. Across the front of the box, it says trust the process. You flip the box over, it
Right.
says, "Hey, are you looking at my bottom?"
What
So
kind of messages do you get
people
when
video
you
it.
get them?
People do the same thing with my box that I did with yours, and like the photos
Yeah.
that Amber took of yours, they'll share it on social media. I've got a
Yeah.
collection of those videos of people unboxing that thing because they don't expect that. Like,
Yeah.
no online
In
coach is
this
gonna
in this day and age, nobody expects that level from
unheard of.
anything that they buy.
It's unheard
From
of.
anything that they buy. It really, really stands out. I mean, you should see the messages and the videos that I'm getting. I mean, honestly, really from like some of the most influential people you will ever come across, like some of the biggest podcasters in the world, uh, presidents of billion-dollar plus companies are like, this blew me the hell away. But here's one. Always adding something that's sort of personal. So I added these watches in there, right? The Casio F91W, and if you guys recall listening to old episodes, they were a bit of a pain to order. It was actually hard to source them. I ended up having to buy 300 off of Amazon, and Amazon canceled my account 5 different times because they were like, nobody in their right mind is dumb shit crazy enough to order 300 of these watches. He must have been hacked. This must have been a mistake. We're canceling his account. We're not sending them. Finally, I escalated it to the point where I'm like, no, I'm actually stupid enough. Like, I would like to buy $10,000 worth of these watches, please. And they sent them. And there's a story about the watches, right? It represents simplicity. It's my brand,
Mm-hmm.
really. It represents simplicity. It represents, hey, solve the problem, solve it simply, solve it once, go on and live your life. Don't let material things distract you. Don't let noise, don't let shiny objects distract you. And that message seems to have been very resonant. What I did not anticipate was how nostalgic this watch is for so many people who have received it. I'll give you an example. Alex Icon co-created the 5 Minute Journal, if you're familiar with the 5 Minute Journal. Basically started the gratitude movement like many years ago. He co-created it with my good friend UJ, actually, who I just saw in Mexico like a week ago. And they've separated now. Alex actually bought the company from UJ, but I sent it to Alex, and Alex, I mean, you could follow him. His name's Alex Icon, Ikonn. He's a great guy, but he's a fancy guy. Like, when he could, he shut down his business in Canada and moved to London, and he's just like a fashion guy, right? His wife is a huge influencer. Mimi Icon's her name. One of the original like fashion influencers. Their big business is hair extensions, and so like that kind of guy. And so he told a story. It's in my Instagram stories now, Amber, and if you want to go see it. But he told a story, and I didn't know any of this, of course, right? Where he was buying a couple new watches, right? Like I don't know, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of watches. Patrick Philippe or whatever the heck these like fancy watches are that like fashion people buy. Like he's rich. And so he was buying these watches, and he told the story that he sent his watch buyer money in. The watch buyer also asked if he could borrow a little bit of money, which Alex, had bought watches from him before, and he thought that this guy was good for it. A couple weeks has passed, and he didn't hear anything back. And then he finds that this guy committed suicide.
Damn.
And this guy, his watch buyer, was basically scamming a whole bunch of people, Alex being one of them, and owed so many people money and was being called out on it that he committed suicide. And Alex, that immediately hit him. And so the day before he received my package is when that happened. And this is all about watches, right? And Alex says, it's like, I don't care about the money, man. Like this is, I care about you. And what Alex said is, he's like, that was like not that I won't ever, wear fancy watches again, but like, I think this is going to be my everyday watch now. because, I've been really trying to figure out a way to simplify my life, to not care so much about the material things. And then he dropped the bomb. He said, um, "My dad passed away when he was 17, and one of the things that I remember about him was that he wore this watch." I mean, obviously, there's just so much going on there. But when you do something different that's personal in such a way, I don't know, I'm always surprised at the stories that it brings up in people, especially something that's nostalgic, especially something that um, uh, has a good sort of message behind it, a message that I think a lot of us need to hear. Um,
Mhm.
You know what's
and
interesting?
so the watches were definitely a big hit. Like every single person was like, "Yo, love the
Yeah.
watch."
As you relay that story, John, and I think it's a good message for students through the OTA to understand that if you're able to do something really nice for somebody, regardless of regardless of what pedestal you've put that person on in your perception of their life, I
Yeah,
found it very common that people that have influence, power, if you want to call it, a notoriety, famous to the family, I found that even though people treat them well, they don't have a lot of instances where people are particularly just kind to them. And they are
and
typically
human.
overwhelmed by an
Yeah,
act of kindness. Like you think this author or this podcast host or this person is so far out of your reach. If you could do a kindness for them,
yeah.
you really get an understanding of how rarely they have that human experience. It's kind of sad, but it's also an opportunity to just do something
I've noticed that
kind
too.
for somebody.
I've noticed that too. They can definitely be hard to get a hold of and get their attention because I mean, there's only so many messages that you can respond to, or you kind of don't accept that there's going to be this kindness. Somebody wants something from you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you expect. And of course, I want something from these people. I want them to talk about the book. Somebody else who, I mean, I know, we've met a bunch of times. She's wonderful. She's incredible. She's actually quoted in the book. Her name's Sally Hogshead. She's one of the best marketers out there. I mean, really, like, I think she might have actually headed up the advertisers agency at one point. But she wrote a book called Fascinate. And somebody who I met a bunch of times, and she's uh, somebody who we've hit it off and text message went back and forth every so often. But anyway, I mean, she messaged back when she got the package, and like first thing she said, she's like, "I want to buy 100 copies for all of our best customers." This is somebody who, I mean, I think is just in a different world than I am. Whether she's above me or beside me or below me, I don't think is even an accurate representation. Just in a different world. Like we just don't circle the same sun. Um, and that was obviously a nice surprise, and that. But um, I think you're right, Len. It can be hard to get people's attention for sure. And most of the time when you do, it's you still got to stand out. Um, and that's what I really tried to do with the packages. I mean, these packages, these VIP packages, really. I mean, yes, the hope is that they will pay for themselves many times over in terms of like referred book sales and things like that, with people liking the book and ordering more copies, and um, like this bulk order for their customers, but also people sharing the book and things like that. But also, it's a relationship builder,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's all these people that are like, yeah, sure, like I don't really know you, maybe I've heard your name, maybe I haven't, maybe I get introduced by you by somebody, but yeah, I'll take your book, like whatever, sure. And they kind of accept it and think maybe they'll open it, think maybe they won't, um, when it arrives, and then it arrives, and they're just oh, like this is different. Like there's something here. Like maybe I should pay more attention to this guy. I think there's something in that too, where yeah, if you want to play a long term, like you could play short term games and you might do well, but I think you want to try to identify other people playing long term games and play a long term game with them. Um,
I'm super
and
interested
so
to
we'll
see
see
what happens. I, I,
with
I
what.
just, I mean, just generally speaking, I, I honestly feel like so many of the people who either purchased the book or were on the VIP list, I really think that they're so caught off guard that they really haven't had an opportunity to kind of make sense of how this book was marketed yet. Like I just think, sometimes
How so?
things trail a little bit, right? You come you interact with some form of entertainment that's so phenomenal that you really don't it needs time to be absorbed for sort of posterity. I
Mm.
think back to the 80s as a person that was born in the 70s, and we kind of didn't know what the Thriller album was at the time, but it was cool, and we're like, oh,
Right,
this is new and different. I remember
right,
watching ABC, the Motown 25, the 25th anniversary, when Michael Jackson
right.
first moonwalked across the stage. It had never been done. And we were like, oh, you see
Yeah,
that cool thing Michael Jackson did? That's what we said the next day. I was 11 years old or
right.
10.
You didn't quite like.
Didn't know what it was
Oh,
really. And then you
right.
age that 10 years and it's a little bit more impressive. And then 15 years and it's,
Yeah.
incredible. And then 20 years and it's one of a kind talent that we'll never see. Like I think because of the care and intention that was put into what you've just done, we're all just kind of like, oh, that was a cool move that he did. It looked like he was going backwards and forwards at the same time. It's not the
Mm.
moonwalk yet, but I think
Well,
in a
I mean, I
year,
am going backwards.
right?
I am going backwards. I mean, I can tell you right now that there will be little to no growth for a significant amount of time on my social media platforms. Um, because I'm making the transition, in the obvious choice, and I think it's the second last chapter, that social media is not enough. I talk about the four stages of growth in social media and how to identify what stage you're at and what game you're playing, depending on what stage you're at. And I am attempting to make the transition from stage 3 to stage 4, basically from industry leader to thought leader.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, I have to appreciate that there are going to be trade offs. And one of the trade offs is the type of content that I post and how I post, and the team that I have around me um, needs to change, needs to be bigger, needs to be more than me. Um, and there's going to be some growing pains. There's already been some growing pains. Uh, I mean, I've lost 2,000 Instagram followers in the last 3 weeks, right? But I think I agree with you, Ann. Um, especially considering that this is a business book. Business books don't fly off the shelves, uh, unless you're Tony Robbins, right? Business books
Mm-hmm.
don't fly off the shelves. They're much more of a slow burn. I mean, my publisher knows that. I know that. Um, it's not like somebody wakes up every morning and they're like, "Oh, I really, really want another book where somebody tells me how to market to get more customers, but this time in a new way."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I mean, I think that this book is. I think that this book is a very unique approach, very needed approach. Um, I think when people read it, they'll recognize that. But nobody's going to jump to read it the same way as they might jump to read uh, a book, like "Bitch, Wash Your Face,"
Mm-hmm.
like that type of self help. Or one that just came out was the "Let Them" theory, I think, with Mel
Mel
Robbins.
Robbins, yeah.
Like that's a that message is a rebranded version of probably 50 books that have sold 1 million copies. Like it's and of course she's done really well in the past and has a big audience and stuff. It's just a totally different game. It's just a totally different play. And so, a big part of me is just is appreciating that, is to try to enjoy the day to day, all of the messages, to try to appreciate it, not get lost in it, not get bummed out when a few things don't go my way that I'd hoped to go my way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a few of these podcasts that I had hoped were going to go live. But also, and then, like some of the distribution channel stuff that I'd hope that people would get the book today, and some people are not going to get it for a few days. So I had planned so much to try to have this lightning strike approach where everybody's book is arriving within the same day or two, and everybody's sharing it and posting it. But that's not really happening, because they're going to arrive in a much more diluted, spread out manner. But that's okay. That's okay. Because, I don't know, yesterday, 2 days ago, not yesterday. Yesterday was okay. 2 days ago on Sunday, I was in my head a fair bit, and it helped. We went on a hike with the boys, and so it helped that we were in the jungle, away from data for a while. But of course, the second we were back in data, I was on my phone, checking, worrying, and I took a long walk on the beach while the kids were with Allison and her mom, and Calvin was playing with some local kids, and I kind of just like sat on a chair and had a beer. And you guys know me enough to know that if I have a beer, it means that I'm, got stuff going on in my head. And I kind of just did some ballpark math. I was like, oh, is this a failure? Right? Like, I kind of just did some ballpark math. I'm like, you know what? Pre-orders and bulk orders, easily over 2,000. I mean, I don't know the numbers. That's part of the struggle with me, is I have no numbers. I have no idea how many books are ordered. None. Absolutely none. I don't think that I'm going to get any sales reports until at least the end of next week. Mm-hmm. And so I've been pre-selling the book. When did the pre-order go live for this book? Like 8 months ago? Like, I've been pre-selling. I have no clue how many books. Had a call with my editor this morning. Publisher seems happy. He says the Audible rankings particularly are really, really good. And it was actually included this morning. I got sent. It was actually included in Audible's weekly newsletter as like one of their 6 hot new releases.
Nice.
So that's good. That's a testament to, pre-orders and stuff, right? I don't think that that's something that the publisher paid for. At least I told them about it, and they seemed surprised and happy about it. Versus, oh yeah, no, we paid for that. But maybe they paid for that. I'm not sure. But there's going to be a minimum 2,000, 2,500 copies sold pre-launch first week. I think that's pretty lowball. I think it'll actually be a few thousand more than that. But either way, that's like a top 1% of a 1% of a book launch. But at the end of the day, you know what? I think I did everything I could have possibly done here. And I guess there's a solace in that not everything's going to go right. There's always going to be things out of my control. I think I've probably said that 10 times this episode. Shows you how I'm feeling.
It's fair, though.
But so long as you can honestly say that you left it all on the table, and I really did, I can't imagine possibly ever having put more into this project than I did. From the writing and the care of the writing of the book, to the research, to the workshopping the materials, a lot of it live here, to the editing, and then into the marketing. I mean, really. And at this point, the next thing to do is to celebrate a little bit. Allison's booked a dinner tonight with some friends, and
Nice.
I'm going to send out a bunch of messages now, asking for Amazon reviews, which is the single best way you can support a new book is to write an Amazon review. So please write an Amazon review. Send me a message so I can say thank you if you like. And just keep plugging away on the next one. If I continue doing that, whether it'll be this book, whether this book will take a while to catch, whether this book will never catch, whether it'll be the next one or the one after that, I can tell you something, which is I'm not fucking going anymore.
Yeah, I'll do a review, but I don't want to talk to you. That's an easy choice for me.
Yeah, is that an obvious?
Yeah, it's an obvious choice for me, John. I'll review it, but as long as I don't have to communicate with you, I am. I'll tell you this one thing, Bucko. I'll tell you one thing right now. I think this is much more of a Trojan horse than you think. I think Bucko, and my grandmother read it. She said that she said he's such a good Jewish boy. She didn't say that. My grandmother died a long time ago. She didn't read it. She didn't.
Wow.
But if she had been alive, John, and she understood Judaism at all, which she didn't.
I don't know what to do with my face right now. How would you, Ember?
Yeah, which she didn't understand it at all.
Oh, no. That was a joke. Yeah. My grandma's dead.
Yeah, that was a joke. For a while. She's long been dead. She's in heaven. She's doing just fine. But I think
family death.
You're right. Yeah,
always a funny joke on a podcast.
Always, nothing lights up a podcast like a deceased elder.
Yes,
but I'll say it's much more of a Trojan horse than I think you believe it to be. Like it seems as if it maybe should or could be a business book, but then when you read it, man, like when you're saying things in the book like keep the special things special, right? Or in saying things like citizens of Uruguay would have to fight 14 kangaroos per person if they invaded. Like what just happened? Like, how did this page get in my book? But in any case,
that was a Family Guy-esque segue.
Yeah, it was so perfect. It was so perfect. I also quite enjoyed 21,000 pounds of ants. That was also information that I needed to learn.
Right, yeah.
But in any case, I think it's masquerading as a business selection, and when you get into it, it really is more about how you're living your one existence and how living it a certain way can translate to some business accolades, some things can happen positively for you, but it's really through the lens of living your life. And the other thing that I mentioned is and this is the question that I had for you. I find it to be so entertaining, right? It's much more entertaining than I expected it to be because of the subject matter that I knew you were going to address. What keeps me reading is the fact that suddenly you're using a quote equally bad analogy that would result in 21,000 pounds of ants.
Right.
I'm like, well, what's this guy gonna say next? What's coming next? So I think it's going to be more of
right amount of unhinged.
The right amount of unhinged.
The right amount of unhinged. I think it's more of a Shawshank Redemption than a Forrest Gump.
I feel like if I were to ever start a writing school, which I never will, I feel like it would be unhinged writing or something like.
It sounds perfect. But
I mean, you know what's. So thank you, Len. I mean, I hope you're right. Look, I do, of course. I want the book to be a massive success. And I'm going to work at it and continue to work at it. My job's not done. It's just starting now, as we continue to talk about it. And I get better and better and better at talking, particularly being interviewed about it, but just content stuff that we're putting out on our own platforms and things, right? But what's interesting is I actually only figured out what the book was really about a couple months ago, far after it was done. And you figured it out by reading it. I didn't figure that out writing it until I was being interviewed about the book over and over and over again. I mean, the Obvious Choice book is about figuring out what game you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
It's about identifying that there are different games that you have the option to play. And what's most important is that you figure out the game that's right for you. And then you understand the rules and you play, to the best of your ability by the rules of that game. And you don't get wrapped up in other games. That is a very important life philosophy in addition to business philosophy. And I think that a lot of business books, I mean, if I were to talk about what I think is my biggest evolution as somebody who writes books in this book from the other books, it's that business books that just talk about business are inherently uninteresting, and it's not actually how we learn or apply or make sense of things. Information is by and large commoditized. There's nothing new. There's no frameworks that matter that are new. There's no equations that matter that are new when it comes to business. And so all that you're really trying to do when you write these books is to say, hey, let's simplify it, let's distill it, let's really narrow it down to exactly what matters most and help communicate it in a way that perhaps you understand how to apply this for yourself in ways that you did not previously understand. Previous books, I was so wrapped up in saying, here's what you do, here's the framework, here's the step-by-step. There are some frameworks here, there's some to-dos, right? But this is a personal development book, masquerading as a business book. Mm-hmm. And, Obvious Challenge that comes out next, I figured out what that book was about after I wrote the whole first draft, so earlier. But the Obvious Challenge it's really about the problem of trying to figure out short-term needs or desires while keeping long-term goals in mind. How do we remedy that? That's the challenge, right? How do we fulfill our short-term needs while still serving our future selves? Takes into account regret, right? Worry, aspirations, personal, professional, otherwise. And that book is, very firmly in kind of the self-development, self-help space. But I think what's interesting is that when that book comes out, people will realize just how much this book is about that too. Just in a different way. But I think you're right, man. I think probably that one thing signifies like the biggest evolution of the books from like previous ones to this one.
I'm glad that the strategy. I'm glad that there were gremlins in the strategy for launch, even though they don't feel good, because
Thanks.
I believe that there's some universal energy that wanted you to see that the evolution of the success of the book is based on the content, not on strategy. So I'm kind of glad that Bezos effed the delivery up. I'm kind of glad that the podcasters were kind of like, I don't know if we're going to release this, because sometimes I'll tell you a Bible story, John. It'll be short,
Okay.
but you'll love this. I know how often I can't count on one hand how many times you'll text me and say, Ren, can we have more Bible stories for the podcast? Here you
I
go.
do
It's
actually. Yeah.
it's every day. It's incessant. It's
Yeah.
nonstop.
Yeah.
But Lazarus died in the Bible, and they called upon Jesus to come save Lazarus, and he waited 3 days, and then he showed up,
Okay.
and I don't know if he hit him on the head with a marble or something, but he did some Jesus-y thing, and Lazarus got back up. And the lesson in that story could be that if he went right away, they could have easily confused resuscitation with resurrection, right? And they could have explained it away. Oh, we just gave, maybe Big J gave him CPR or something, hit him with the defibrillators.
Right.
He probably had a pair
Right.
even back then. But no, it had to get to a point where people knew that there was no outside explanation for the
Right.
resurrection aside from the fact that this entity did a certain thing.
Mm.
And sometimes I found that if I'm generally distrustful of the universe, the universal order of things, and I try to manipulate things to my advantage, I am
Yeah.
prevented from being able to do that so that I can connect with my own merit. No, the reason that this was successful is because you treated people well, because you're professional at what you do, you did what you're supposed to, and that paid off for you. It's not because you
Right.
sponsored this soccer team in this area and the community got behind you because they saw your name on the back of these soccer
Right.
shirts. No, you actually did it. You have the capability to create this outcome through hard work and your gift and talent. And perhaps that's what we're seeing here. So that as this thing swells, well, I try to control it by having these things hit at one time. I try to control it by having people all get the book at the same time, but I can
Yeah.
rest in the confidence that passionate the passionate effort that I put into this is something that will lead me to the successes that I like to have going forward, and it up levels your confidence about the craft that you're involved in. So perhaps that's where we are now. You beautiful Mensch. Uh, that's where we are now. That certain things just kind of didn't work out the way that you thought, so you could
Sure.
control things in a manner that you had pre-planned. No, actually, you produced something that was quality enough and built relationships that were tight enough that that you can count on that in the future. It's
Yeah.
it's a
No,
it's a
that's
direct
huge.
deposit against future anxieties, right?
Yeah.
So now you can write with a little bit more peace that if I put into this thing what I know I can put into this thing, and I trust it, I can also trust an outcome. But if I try to control it, sometimes when we can control something, it'll cause us to take a step back from the effort, right? Because I can
Mm.
manufacture this thing, but no, my friend, not you, John Goodman.
Yeah.
If your effort persists, then
I
you'll be able
see
to
it. I mean, I
confidently
see.
go into the next endeavor. And that's why I'm an excellent
Yeah.
coach, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it
Yeah.
here first. Um,
I
Your
see. I see what you're
talent.
saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying with so many of my entrepreneur buddies who talk about wanting to write books, and
yeah.
they're always trying to deconstruct successes
Yes.
and figure out all of the nuts and bolts that made this thing good, and then build it up,
Backwards engineer it.
with their own words, with their own backwards engineering. It's like,
Sometimes you're
you
just
guys are
good.
missing the most important. You guys are missing the most important thing, which is you actually have to be good and have
Right.
something interesting to say.
This is true.
Um,
This is true. And that's all I'm saying.
like,
And I think you interrupted
yeah.
Amber because she was going to give me a compliment, and I really want to hear that.
I was.
Do
Go
You
it.
ahead.
have
Let's end on the compliment, Amber.
Yes.
What are you going to say to Anne?
you have the best gift for saying something that makes someone like, what the fuck is he talking about? And then you give this story and you're like, where is he going with it? And then you finally get it and you're like, he is a genius.
That's
Like, I
true.
don't understand.
John,
I'll be listening to you. I have no idea where he's going,
no
but
idea
then
where
the
I'm
moment
going.
hits and you're like, oh my God, he's a fucking genius.
And John
Yeah.
tried
And
to
it
cut
just
that out of this
astounds me every
episode.
time.
And that's so like him to try to reduce my shine per episode. John, get your shit together, buddy. I take the back the good Jewish boy thing I said earlier. My dead grandmother no longer likes you, John. Now.
Well,
You just had that conversation.
Yeah, now what?
and with that, talk to you next time.